Welcome to this episode of the Structural Engineering Channel, a podcast focused on helping structural engineering professionals stay up to date on technical trends in the field and to help them succeed in their careers and lives. In this episode, we'll be talking with Nabeal Khatib, founder and CEO of Legendfortutoring, LLC, and he's previously shared his expertise on our Pass the FE exam channel. And in today's episode, he's going to delve into the essential insights and strategies for success in structural engineering careers, and also be providing us some tips about how to study for the PE exam and the structural depth of the PE exam. And he's also going to be talking about some time management techniques and some other tips that he has for us. Also, he's going to be talking about and summarizing some of the upcoming changes for the structural engineering exam that's going to be transitioning to computer-based testing, or CBT. So stay tuned for that. He provides a quick summary on that for those of you taking the SE exam. I'm your co-host, Matt Picardal, and this is the Structural Engineering Channel podcast. Now let's jump into our conversation of the week with Nabeal. Nabeal, welcome to the show. Can you start by introducing yourself and tell us what you do on a daily basis?
Hey, Matt, thank you for having me. I am Nabeal, aka Newton Khatib. I am a structural engineer. I work for a company called Tetra Tech. I do design bridges. I do design some pipe racks, foundation, steel frames. What else? Vertical vessel, horizontal vessel, stuff like that. Anything to do with oil and gas industry, as well as bridges. I don't know if that hit the point, Matt, or let me know if you want me to say more. I'm a talkative person.
No, it sounds great. Yeah, it looks like you got the design experience. That's what you're doing right now. And you're also the CEO and co-founder of Legendfortutoring,
I
correct?
am.
And
Yep.
maybe
I
talk a
am.
little bit about that as well.
Yes. So I am the CEO and the founder, not the co-founder. I am the founder of Legendfortutoring. It's a company that it has to do with anything that prepares you for the FE, the PE, also STEM courses. We do have people, help us, and the team is, pretty equipped with all these topics, math, FE, PE mainly. And I'm also an instructor or affiliate professor at University of Colorado, Denver, and Metro State University. I am a husband of my beautiful wife, Manel. We have a daughter. Her name is Stella. And we have a boy coming up here in less than a week, the due date. So it's
Oh,
getting
congrats.
serious.
It's
Thank you.
exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, so more than a structural engineer, lots of titles, lots of different hats to play. And yeah, I want to get into like the CBT and the PE, but before that, since you do have work experience and you're doing that right now, what are some of the skills or the expertise that you think that structural engineers that are working right now or that are about to get into the profession, do you have any tips on how to develop or accelerate their career growth?
Um, it has to do with like the real technical part, or it kind of both on the personal, level and the work. Is it like
Yeah,
both?
I'd say both. Yeah,
Okay,
because I have my opinions on that too. I wanted to see what yours were in terms of
sure.
what skills they can grow.
So I personally think that the personal skills are way important than the technical skills. I know people, personally, they're really great, phenomenal, outstanding, engineers, but they're not fun to work with. So one of the things that I really like to have when I'm like on a big team or a small team or whatever, the, understanding each other. You've got a scenario that you have to be out 2 hours or whatever. You got to make sure that you cover your team work or your coworker up. I like when you're, senior and you like to share your knowledge, not be and say, oh, this is the way I'll learn it. Why not? You're not aware of this. I'm surprised that you don't know this. I've heard it multiple times from seniors to other engineers where they do not have the technical part, strong. I was like, oh, you graduated, but you should know how the moment works. If you've got wind, lateral load, and you've got arm, here's the moment, right? I don't like that attitude. I for sure I do speak out if I hear stuff like that. It's also good to have the time management. It's also good to have the fresh air mentality. A lot of engineers, sadly, they get into the office at 8 o'clock and leave at 5. Work, 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 work. When you talk to them, they don't really want to talk because simply they don't have time to talk, and they're overwhelming themselves, or they just burn themselves out. So that's another thing. And obviously, technical is very important. Technical is extremely big, component towards being a good professional structural engineer. Make sure that you build your own templates. I like to talk about this here, whether now or later. The 4T framework. Me and Anthony and myself, we talked about that briefly. Kind of building the templates, learn from your mistakes, kind of be familiar with the manuals. Just learn and not think that you are the only person who knows this. These are very great skills to have and share with your coworkers. Say, I don't know it. Can you teach me? Or my brain works that way, not this way. A lot of people expect that all engineers think in one direction. So when they explain things, they explain it just straight. And some people like to see a visual sketch or a 3D sketch. Like personally, if I see something 3D, I would like, oh, okay, that's okay. That there is like some load. Okay, that's not going to fit. Why I'm just designing for this? Because geometry is not going to fit. So these 3-dimension or three kind of like D view could definitely help some engineers. They're whether entry level or mid level. Seniors, sometimes they tend to know this right off the bat. So obviously the list goes on and on, but let me know if you've got a particular thing that you want me to share or to have more thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, that's I definitely agree with that, especially the coaching aspect of it. Like you were saying, there's, I think, in terms of the education,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the schooling, and then they graduate. I think this applies to almost all the engineers, unless you
Mm-hmm.
go to like a really specific school geared towards the industry. You're not going to know a lot when you get into the industry. I think there's a lot of things that are emphasized in school that aren't really specific. Like you probably don't need to know how to derive things off the top of your head, which they emphasize in school. But then you get to the industry, no, there's a different skill set. And a lot of these things, a lot of, especially students, they've never even seen a lot of construction. They're kind of just going right from the textbook. So there's going to be training. And yeah, there's one way to go about encouraging them and asking them, like, you should have learned this in school. How do you not know this? Uh, it's not, that's the best way to demoralize some of these
Exactly.
students.
Yeah. I heard it multiple times.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, like first I'm still learning, and not because I have a PhD or almost a PhD, it means that I know everything. And when you tell someone like this, you're just saying you're dumb in a different way. And that's
Yeah.
extremely, not encouraging the whether intern or the intro level engineers to work harder. You're just gonna give him a tool to say give up.
Yeah. And they probably already have imposter syndrome when they get into the industry. So piling that on top of them, yeah, it doesn't help encourage them to stay in the industry and learn, because I mean, if they weren't taught, how you can't blame them for not being taught in school. I mean, that's kind of how our education system is like. I mean, blame the education systems. You can't just blame them for not knowing it. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And also about the technical skills too, which I think we can get into, because I think one of the things about engineering in terms of your career path, one way or another, you can't get away from not knowing the technical. You can't just get
Of
training in
course.
management and then manage engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can, but it probably won't work out too well, because
Mm-hmm.
they need training and you're probably the one that's going to be
Yes.
mentoring them.
And I've
But
seen that, Matt, where some, managers, they do not have the PE, license. And I could see from my point, I could be totally wrong, but they're not thinking the way the professional slash a manager, engineer would think, right? Because they will come to you and say, oh, this is a copy of a project that we've done before. A copy does not mean that you don't need to check all the components.
Mhm.
Anything goes out the door, out of the park, it needs to be checked thoroughly, right? You need to be making sure that every single ink on the piece of paper verified, checked, everything looks good. When you don't have your PE, or when you're a manager that more a project manager, not having to do a lot with the technical part, you probably minimize how the professional slash the entry, junior, whatever level, they work hard to get all these sections to you. There's a pipe rack, W12 by 65 or whatever it may be. You're like, oh, okay, this is just a copy, so let's just use 12 by 65. That might not work, or might be like over, sized, right?
Yep, I think that's one of the cool things about structural engineering. Even though you may have similar projects, they're never always the same. Like there's always some component that's different, or maybe at least for me, when I'm doing building design, maybe it's a completely different site, and that changes a lot of the design. So I think that's what's pretty cool. But yeah, you kind of need that engineering background to better help the team in terms of the bigger picture and how they think structurally. So yeah,
And
great points
especially
on
for
that.
you, I mean, you're like in California, so like anything changes with that seismic category, oops, a lot of things changes, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the templates that you're working with or that could you that you mentioned. Could you that seemed interesting. Could you just do a brief summary on that one?
Sure. I've been lately, I would say probably a year ago, I started what I call it a 4T framework, which basically categorize the 4 tools that you really need very heavily in order to be a successful professional structural engineer. Number one
Mm,
is the terms. I like to keep the T's. You could call the terms concept or nomenclatures or whatever it may be, right? And then you get to the second thing, templates. That I'm going to emphasize more. And the third one is called the time management. And the fourth T is the trust. You won't be able to trust yourself without having the time, the templates, and the terms all together. The templates part, it took me a minute to like recognize how sometimes simple stuff that we know, but when we get to a project, we forget to check, or we forget to like do a quick run, calcs. So I started what I call it templates, meaning let's say you're doing retaining wall design. What I like to
mhm.
do is say, okay, I've got serviceability, I've got strength. Serviceability under that, overturning, sliding, bearing, right? And then you go to the strength, you've got your moment, your minimum, whatever reinforcement, you've got the shear and other requirements. So I start building these templates saying, okay, if I'm doing this, I will need to do 1, 2, 3, 4 for this, design. If I need to do strength, okay, here's the moment, singly, reinforced, concrete beam or whatever slab. Here's what you need to do. And obviously adding the references, because sadly, when I check some people's work, they do not have the references. And that makes it really hard for me if I'm not familiar with the design very well to like verify or validate, say, okay, this is okay. I know this. Where's your reference? Okay, you're doing ASHTO, not ACI. Oh, you're doing IBC. You're not doing so and so. You're taking your SDS or whatever, some of these design spectrum value from IBC, not taking them from the California reference or whatever, because every design, as you know, Matt, and you know better, obviously, you're the SE here, so you know the most knowledge, or the most knowledgeable person when you get to the SE, that everything is going to be different when you deal with one design versus another design, right? So that's kind of the templates that I start building, and it doesn't have to be only work. Like if you're preparing for your PE, start to get, these templates. Okay, chapter 7 from, ACI talks about one-way slab. Okay, here's the minimum thickness, here's your reinforcement, and so on and so forth. And I'm actually building that as one of the textbook that I'm writing, or the booklet, if you want to call that, because I wrote some booklet about FE prep course, or FE practice exam, some like guideline helps you study for the FE, similarly for PE. And one of the things that I'm really working on right now is more building the templates for PE depth, and building some templates that you commonly see in practice and in industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great summary. Terms, templates, time, and trust. And with the templates, at least with regards to structural engineering and test taking too, yes, having some type of summary or template, step-by-step procedure or system, that really helps, because if you've ever tried to study those code books, they they point you in 10 different
Oh
references,
yeah.
and you're like, what? You got to flip the page like 10 times to get what they're actually saying. But then if you can just summarize it in a couple of procedures, then that makes your checks and your test taking a lot easier. And yeah, let's get into the CBT, PE, and SE exams. Could you explain some of those, and what are some of the tips and strategies that have been effective for you, for engineers that are going to study for those? And yeah, keys to success for those.
Yes. So this is one of my strong suit that I like to talk about. It is taking the FE and the PE. And obviously, if you're passionate about taking the SE, or you're required to take the SE, this is a great deal. It is considered one of the hardest tests in structural engineering world. Tips and tricks. I start with the 4T framework. Original, going back to the original, going back to square one. There is not a lot of tricks here, not a lot of puzzles. The first thing that you want to know is you want to know your references. For the FE, easy peasy, you get to that handbook, bada bim, bada boom, you're done, right? Everything is well written. Started 2014, the NCS started the procedure for CBT for FE. It's pretty precise, pretty condensed. I like the manual very well. Get back to the PE, or going forward to the PE, it's not the same procedure. It's not as easy as that. Number one, it's a new procedure. It's new, kind of, they're changing the entire system to CBT. And if you don't know what a CBT stands for here, it's computer-based test. And the PE has started last year, January 2022, being CBT for all disciplines. And we're talking here mainly about the civil engineering discipline / structural. Knowing your manuals. If you go to the NCS website, and you'll see there are a bunch of stuff that you need to know from the specs. And you got to make sure that up to date. The NCS does not really change frequently, but they could change their manual from 1.1 to 1.2, from 10.1 to 10.2, whatever your discipline is. On top of the NCS handbook, you will have what they called it design standards. That includes ACI, the steel manual, the NDS, the timber manual, the TMS, the masonry manual, the PCI, the pre-stress precast, ASHTO, IBC, what else? OSHA, and others. I think a total of 11 or probably 10 manuals, right? So you better be aware of that. These manuals are going to show up on the day of the test. Probably a little different than what you practiced. Like, they could be not one single PDF. They could be split it to, individual chapters. Go into steel manual and try to type in something, or Control F, finding 2,000 plus pages in that manual. It is going to be very tough to know where to find things. So you better be prepared for that. Practice problems. You got to practice a lot of problems. You got to make sure that you see, not just knowing the manuals, because you're not reading a novel. You're not reading just like an article talking about how to get fit. right? You're reading about something that applies in real life. So you better say, okay, I read the minimum thickness here for a one-way slab is going to be chapter 7, section 3, table 7311, just an example. You go there, you see these stuff. Okay, well, how can I apply this? Okay, here's a slab for you, simply supported, cantilever, continuous from one end, continuous from two ends. You got to apply that to your real life. You go, it's not only one section or one chapter. You're talking about 11 manuals. If you add all the pages, they could go up to 10,000 plus pages. That's a serious number we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So what else? Time management. Go back, terms, templates, time. It's all about these 14. I promise if you follow this framework, I think there is no reason why you're not going to be able to pass and smash the test. The only reason why not is sadly it's a CBT. And when we talk about CBT as a computer, populates these questions. So let's say you're not good or you don't do a lot with masonry. You get 11 questions on masonry. That might not be good, starting point, right? I know
Hmm.
some people, got the test. They're pretty good with concrete, steel, NDS, or the timber, and then got a lot of questions on masonry. They did not pass, not because they're a bad engineer. There's nothing wrong with you failing a test. There's always, learning lesson from each failure mode. And then the time management. We talked about the templates. We talked about the terms. Time management. You do the math. 6 minutes per each problem. If you're not capable to do that, guess what? What's going to happen? You're probably going to scramble around at the end of the test and you select all these C, hoping for C for correct, right? CC, correct,
Hmm.
and C. So you're just, basically pushing buttons here and there and flagging, and say, okay, I'm going to get back to this, but the time is running and ticking, right? So that's another thing that you want to be aware of. Speaking of flagging, there is nothing wrong with a flag. I keep saying this to my clients, my students, my coworkers. If you're flagging, it does not mean that you're losing the battle. It means pretend that you're talking to someone who's very important and someone interrupts you. You're not being disrespectful to that person. Say, give me a minute. I just want to finish my conversation with this guy and then get back to you. With being very respectful, you're flagging that person, not saying, nope, I'm not talking to you. Flagging that person, say, you're not that important to me. I'm going to get the important questions first and then get to the questions that I have flagged. People, when I say flag, like, oh, flagging me, yeah, flagging a lot means no good. Nope, that's not a strategy. I flag 11 questions on the PE. First 11 problems on the test, I flagged them and I was panicking. I said, I'm failing. That's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with failing. What's going to happen if you fail? Don't put yourself in a very tough spot and bad vibes and say, well, I failed. I'm not a good engineer. Nope. It's not a measurement of how good you are. It's just a measurement of, are you well prepared for this test? It's sadly, it's not a engineering test anymore. It's basically a memorization test, knowing your
Yeah.
manual, right? And it's also learning lesson from each failure that you do. I mean, you're not gonna you're gonna do your best. You forget the rest. Keep always your head up. Don't feel that you're not a good engineer or you're a bad engineer failing the test. There is always learning lesson. 375 is the only thing that you're gonna lose if you $375 if you know fail the test. That's the only thing that you're gonna lose.
Yep. Yeah, it's important for people taking the test to not put their, what do you call it, their ego or their self-worth in these tests, because like you said, it's just a test. And what you mentioned also, the test taking strategy, which isn't engineering, is a huge part of the test. If you have a
Mhm.
bad strategy going in, uh, it's not going to go well.
Mhm.
And that's not really engineering. That's more test taking skills. So, okay, you're not a great test taker. You can improve that.
Pretty
And
much.
doesn't mean you're a bad engineer or anything like that.
Yep. I took the
And
test, Matt, when I had only 1 year. Yeah, about 1 year of experience. So I don't have tons of experience.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people, they have tons of experience and they take the test. And if they fail, there's nothing wrong with your knowledge. As you said, there is some tactics that you need to do to be well prepared for these skills, the test taking skills, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I know some engineers that don't pass. What is it? What if they're in the office? You won't hear about it. They won't say anything if they didn't pass. It's because I was like, no one wants to say that they didn't pass,
Of
because
course.
all they hear is all the people passing. You go on LinkedIn or you go talk to the engineers. Oh yeah, I passed, I passed, I passed. It's like, yeah, those are the ones that are saying it. But if you look at the statistics, it's like 50, half of them didn't pass. They're not
Mm-hmm.
saying anything either. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels isolating. I know, maybe if you're just looking at that, but it's like, no, you're not the only one that didn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's not even get started on the SE exam where like 75% don't pass. Or it's like, no, there's nothing wrong, man. It's
No,
just a test.
that's encouraging. I'm preparing for the SC. I'm gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, I think before we get into that, I want to talk about that. But could you also share? I'm just curious too, because I took the PE exam when it was paper and pencil. And so I'm used to, and I think for the SE exam too, I took that paper and pencil, and we're lugging a huge card of books and references on these paper and pencil exams. How does that change for the CBT for the ones that have never, uh, maybe that that are like me and they've just taken the paper and pencil? I'm guessing you don't have a card of books, so you need to learn how to control F everything, or how does that work?
Yep. So two major changes on that. The first thing, what you said, you're not gonna take your, suitcase full with books and with references. That's not happening anymore. What's gonna happen is the screen is gonna be splitting to two, identical, I guess, identical, size. And one is gonna be on your right, is gonna be the questions, and the left or on that, aside, you will be having the references and the NCS handbook. So for those
Hmm.
who took the FE, they're pretty familiar with having on the right, the test is on the right, the left is going to be the NCS FE handbook. Very similar, except you're going to have two tabs. One is the NCS handbook, and the other tab is going to be design standards. You click on that, populates a bunch of references. And that's the worst part, man. You're gonna memorize and you're gonna be control F's might not be your great friend. Bookmarks might be better, but also memorization is a heavy, key changer here. Because
Oh.
if you do not remember that chapter 7.3 is talking about the minimum thickness, you don't have to go wild, say 7.3.1.1. No, I don't think that's probably a good strategy. But knowing, one thing that I wrote recently, a small article about the pattern. If you really look at ACI, just an example, there is a pattern. 7.6 is the minimum reinforcement for one-way slab. 8.6 is the minimum reinforcement for two-way slab. 9.6 is the minimum reinforcement for beams. 10.6 is the minimum reinforcement for columns. 11.6, the minimum reinforcement for walls. Right? That pattern, it would help you kind of connect the dots, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
So this is very important. Go to the NDS. 4.3.1 is talking about saw lumber. 5.3.1 is talking about galulums. 6.3.1 talking about holds. 12.3.1 talking about connections, anchor or whatever, right? So that pattern, it helps you sort of connecting the dots, not only in ACI or NDS. So that's number one, that people need to be aware of the manuals and the reference and the NCS handbook. The second thing that is a game changer, time. There is not anymore having 4 hours, 4 hours. Nope.
Mhm.
You could do 2 hours, 6 hours. You could do 3 hours, 5 hours. You could save some of your time from the breadth, which used to be called AM portion,
Yeah.
should be the depth, which is usually, or used to be called the PM portion, right?
Yeah.
And when I prepare my clients, that's what I do for them. Because in my preparation, I take the time as the most important, key here. Because if they could get the problems in 4 minutes for breadth, and instead of 6 minutes, you're saving 2 minutes per each problem, 2 times 40, you're doing 80 minutes here extra, throw them on the depth. Because the depth is
Oh.
not as easy to find. It's not hard. No, it's not that hard, but it's all about like the references, like where to find it in the manual. That might take some time. So having that an hour to an hour and a half, it's going to help you tremendously, right?
Oh, so
So,
it carries over
oh
now.
yeah,
Oh,
yes,
that's interesting. Yeah. Yep. When I
and then
took
the
it, it was 4 and 4. So yeah,
yep,
that's interesting.
and it used to be 40-40, right? Now it's
Yep.
41-39. For
Huh.
for yeah, it's so weird. I heard a
Oh,
guy who yeah, that's just doesn't make any sense. There is a guy who took it
oh
recently. He
man.
said 42-38. Like what? Or maybe we're going to
Maybe
50-30.
some algorithm thing that they're doing. I don't know with the computers now.
Or NCS.
Yeah,
Nobody
that's
knows what the
interesting.
NCS.
Yeah. Yeah. And that again goes back to strategy. It's like general, if you have a good strategy, you'll have more time for the structural PE depth.
Yep,
Did you have any I guess insights on how to build a library or maybe how to better prepare for the structural depth PE for those taking it for the first time
yep. And
or
that's
multiple
what
times?
actually what I'm working on recently, Matt. I'm preparing kind of library for each manual, and I could share that with you here. Um, so basically what I'm doing, I am saying, okay, let's start with the ACI, just an example.
Hmm.
And chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Normally these 5 chapters are very general stuff in them, such as nomenclatures. They're very important, but they're not going to be heavily on the test. You gotta definitely know your nomenclatures. That's chapter 2. Then you get to chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a different category for me. The second category is chapter 6, starting with all these maybe coefficient for negative and positive moment. That's very important. That a lot of the NCS focuses on. And I'm also correlating that with some real problems at the same time. Like if you go by the NCS practice exam, you're going to have some questions that kind of like directly from these chapter. So what I typically do, I say, category 1, chapter 1 through 5. Here's what you should be prepared for. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's another
Mm-hmm.
category that's red. I call it red category, meaning it's red hot. Very important to know. Chapter 6. Here's, the thing that you need to know. It's the tables that you need to know. Building, when you build a table, a lot of people think, okay, I'm writing table 6.5.2. Well, that's not enough because you're saying 6.5.2, but you're not giving yourself an example, kind of connects the table with a real life example, if that makes sense. Right. And then
Yeah.
you get
Mm-hmm.
to chapter 7 and say, okay, here's 7.6 minimum reinforcements for one-way stop. Okay, that's good. We're not going to memorize that. We're going to say, okay, maybe one of the problems that you see on the test as this. So connecting these, categories, with prioritizing, if you want to say. Obviously, nobody predicts what the questions are going to be, and it is extremely vague. But also, we have I've tutored thus far probably since the CBT starts, probably like at least 20-25 people who
Mm-hmm.
passed the test. I have a passing streak on CBT PE civil structural. And what I do normally after they took the test, they will come, back and say, okay, here's what we had. So I will put them, embedded them kind of in my, templates or in my, sort of library, whatever you want to call it, saying, okay, here's a previous, question pops up like this on this topic. Ashto, a lot of people like always asking me and say, do I have to buy the Ashto, manual? In my opinion, you do not have to, because normally on the PE, there's not a bunch of questions on Ashto, but that does not mean that you're not gonna get, right? So it's that prioritizing type of thing, if that makes sense, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going back to the test taking skills, and yeah, if you're gonna have one ASHTO question, should you be spending all of your time on ASHTO? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you just need another code book and
Yep.
know where to search for it. At least look at it.
Yep. Exactly.
And
Yep.
yeah, I think doing some type of summaries, or like what you're doing, something that can tell you what the important parts are that you actually need to study and that pop up during the test is huge. Because yeah, if the test tells you to study ACI is pretty big. But once you know like what the priorities are and what to study, I think that's a huge help. And
Yep.
yeah, thanks for doing that.
Of
And
course.
what about I know you haven't taken it yet, the SE exam. I finished the paper and pencil, but I believe next year or soon they're going to
Yep.
be transferring to the CBT as well, computer-based testing. What do you know about that? I mean, I've heard some stuff, but since you're actually going to be preparing for it, what do you know so far about that? And maybe what's good, what's bad that you think?
I don't know if there's any good. um, well, I sat in a webinar was conducted by the NCS. So all what I'm going to refer here is talks and a conversation from Mr. Jason Gamble. He is the Chief Examination Officer. And there's nothing that if you know me enough, I would not say anything that X, said. I do not, follow that strategy. I like to go to the original well and dig the water from there. That's just me, because to be honest, all these, tests, they're going to be conducted by the NCS. So you're going to waste your time if you start talking about, these tests and getting and gathering information from other resources, in my opinion, right? So that's what I know from Mr. Jason again. The test is going to be now, comprised of 4 categories: vertical, lateral, building, and bridges, like what used to be. There is not really changes on that. Here's the big change. 1, the breadth is not going to be 40 questions anymore. It is going to be 55 questions. 10 questions are what they call them pre-test for future tests. They're not going to be 4 hours anymore. So they extended the 4 hours to 5 hours and 30 minutes. Doing the same ratio: 4 hours, 40 problems, 55, and then 5 hours and 30 minutes. What else here? That would be MCQ, multiple choice questions. It is going to be CBT starting from January 2024, so only in about 6 months.
Oh,
Yep, all year round. 7 to 10 days, you will receive your result. I took, yeah, it's very nice. That's for the breadth, though. The depth is gonna say eventually. That's what Mr. Jason said. Eventually, quote unquote, it is going to be all year round, and it is going to be 7 to 10 days. But that's gonna be 7 to 10 days. I took my PE CBT on Saturday, and I received the grade on result on Wednesday. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but normally NCS releases the test or the results on Wednesday around 10 o'clock Eastern time in the morning. So I received it like around 8. I'm in Denver here, Mountain Time. What else here? 20 minutes break, 10 minutes tutorials and non-disclosure. That's for the breadth portion. Used to be only 8 hours. Now it's 11 hours. So 3 hours change there. And it used to be 80 questions. Now we're talking about 110. Take 20 questions off pre-test, but who knows? God only knows, these pre-tests, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then we go to depth. Here's the big change, It used to be, paper and pencil, not anymore, CBT. It is not going to be all year round. It is only twice, like right now. And
Okay.
your result is going to be 6 to 8 weeks, very similar to right now. And so 5 scenarios. Each scenario, they're all going to be alternative item types, or well known as AIT. 5 scenarios, 12 questions for each scenario. 2 of these questions, they're going to be pre-test. The 5th scenario is going to be all pre-test. So
What does a
technically,
pretest mean?
pre-test means they're just basically given the question for a future test. There's like, oh, this is hard. Nobody solved it. So we're going to take it off.
Oh, okay. They're gonna
That's
be like, okay, gotcha.
exactly.
Testing question. Yeah.
Yep. It is going to be also, they're going to provide a handbook for that.
Okay.
Obviously the manuals, similarly, I'm assuming for the PE, it's going to be the same. I don't think it's going to be, much difference. Probably the NDS is going to have more the seismic and the wind. I'm assuming having more seismic for steel. The small book for that, steel seismic. I think it's one of the versions. According to Mr. Jason, he said anything that is basic is not going to be in these manuals. He gave an example saying 1 feet is 12 inches, where you should not write this for you. 1 kip is equal 1,000 pounds. You should not write this for you. And as I mentioned, it's not going to be it's not going to be 7 to 10 days result. It's still going to be the first few years, as only twice a year, as currently right now, 6 to 8 weeks to get your result. And most likely you're
Hmm.
going to get your result on Wednesday. So that's all what I know. And one item here is the depth is going to be 10 hours instead of 8 hours. Right now it's 8 hours, or yeah, right now is 8 hours. The cost, the total cost, that a big change, change in the cost, it's going to be $1,400 instead of 1,500 for each component now. And it's going to be $350 per each component. So 350 breadth, lateral, 350 depth, lateral, 350 breadth, vertical, 350 depth, vertical. So a total of 4 questions, or sorry, 4 components, each of them 350. So that puts us at $1,400. So a change of $400. And that's coming from everything that I'm saying here. It's coming directly from Mr. Jason Gamble. One more time, because I don't like to refer to any other resources except the NCS.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thanks for that quick summary. I think yeah, my thoughts on that from, I think like you're saying, they're all like pre-test. They're testing this. They got to test it out. You're gonna
Yeah.
be the first ones to test it out. I think yeah, I do like the computer-based testing. You get your results faster, and I think that's a good thing. And I think from what I've heard as well, and let me know if you're not sure or if you didn't say it, that once you pass a component, you passed it. Like the morning, if you pass the morning,
Yes.
you don't need
Yep.
it. You don't need that's it. That's done.
Yep.
You don't need to
Exactly.
worry about it next year. So I think
Yep.
that's the good,
That's good.
one of the good things. Looks like it's longer, but hopefully, and I think people will have to accommodate the new computer-based testing. The biggest change for me, if I was to do that, would be I tabbed everything in my books and my textbooks, made my own summary sheets. So that's how I would pass the test. But if you're transitioning from that to computer-based testing, it looks like they have like a handbook, which is, I'm guessing it summarizes a lot of the equations. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or I've
Yep.
never done that. So maybe that could be a good thing. Uh, you don't, you don't need
In
to lug
my
in a cart.
Yes, in my opinion, to be honest, the breadth portion, having the NCS handbook, is an advantageous thing. That's in my
Okay.
opinion. Having the depth being in the references and giving them to people as a PDF, it's a little more challenging because normally, as you said, you're tabbing things. So if you look at
Yeah.
my, steel manual, you see it's tabbed all over the places, right?
Yep.
Having this and try to, if they give you the option to tab PDF, do your thing on a bookmark type of thing, it's okay.
Uh,
Maybe Bluebeam or annotate things, totally
yeah.
fine, right? But having the manual you never seen before, the same version, because now this is one file, right? You go on
Yeah.
on the test, it's not going to be one file. It's going to be part one file, part two, individual file, part three, chapter 16, part 16, for example. It's almost a
Yeah.
1,000 pages. That
Yeah.
connection part is just, I'm not a fan of chapter. I love connection and I like it's challenging, but that chapter is extremely, time consuming if you're doing control F.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I guess we'll have to see. But I think the biggest thing for me, at least from my experience, is the depth portion. I think one of the hardest things, and I don't know the statistics, but from at least talking to other engineers that take the test, uh, if they fail, it's probably going to be the depth portion because it's an essay kind of thing where you
Yes.
have to justify it. So if
Mm-hmm.
they're going to computer-based testing, that may or may not be a good thing. I guess we'll have to find out on how they, because now it's like a multiple choice, but different. It's not an essay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if I guess how the pass rates go. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
good
I
luck
think,
on that one.
thanks, man. I think that the essay versus the AIT, I think it's in my opinion, better because you're gonna either have a traditional multiple choice question or a multi-select. So
Mhm.
not really a lot to write. Could be fill in the blank according to them, drag and drop, or
Yeah,
predetermined, options. Still, I think, in my opinion, is better than writing,
yeah,
right?
I'd agree too.
Yes.
I know just some people getting frustrated with like, oh, I
The
failed the entire
diagnostic report.
test.
But
So
though
yeah,
that
I guess we'll see about that.
is the diagnostic report, though, it doesn't really tell you much. Oh, you not acceptable. What does that mean? You're
Yep.
not being accepted. Okay. Well, good luck next time.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wish they would give us more info on. At least what was even the question? But I know, yeah, I'm not, I don't run it, so it's like that's one of the feedback is like, oh, I wish they would give us more feedback on how to improve next time you take the test. But that's, I guess that's going away. So we'll see how this whole thing goes, and best of luck on that. And I guess you're used to computer based testing, so hopefully that translates pretty well too.
I hope.
Um, yeah, Nabeal, I know we're running out of time. I lost track of time here, but uh, to kind of end off, did you have any additional resources such as guides, practice exams, or mentorship opportunities, like you were alluding to, that Legend4Tutoring provides to help individuals pass? And if so, how can they contact you for these exams and tutoring?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it here short. We definitely do have a lot of good resources, whether if you're looking for practice exams only, or whether if you're looking for one-to-one tutoring. I personally do not believe in pre-recorded videos. I like to see my client, talk to them, and yada yada. We do group sessions, we do one-to-one, but I do not do pre-recorded. The reason why, you're just looking at robots is talking, and you're not really asking the questions or whatever. So if you're looking for one-to-one or group sessions or practice exams or mentoring or tips and tricks, please reach out whether directly to to me or to my team. The website is legendfortutoringdenver.com, and you could contact us through the website and inquiry, or personally to my, email address or to my cell phone number. There is nothing wrong with that. We will be more than happy to help you and take, you from whether block one or, from A all the way to get you to where you pass this exam and release the stress on your end.
Awesome. And we'll provide those links in the descriptions below for those of you that are online. And any final piece of advice, Nabeal, before we sign off, for those in their careers or trying to, make the most out of life professionally, or even just some general life advice? What do you got?
I would say, since we're talking about FEPESE, I would say if you can take them as soon as possible, please do so. I see people coming to me, and I had a client signed up yesterday where I had to sign the invoice, and he's talking to me 15 years away from college. It is very tough to get him back on the track, not because he's not a good engineer or whatever. These stuff, you're doing something with concrete, you basically forget pretty much most of your stuff. Statics, a lot of people, use it, sometimes in the office day in, day out. A lot of people rely heavily on the softwares, the finite element softwares. So not a lot of people rely on hand calcs. I'm a person who like to do hand calcs first and then check with the software. So take it as soon as possible. Please invest in yourself towards this test. I know sometimes cost and budget could be an issue, but trust me, this is an end goal. This is your ultimate goal, that if you take your PE, we're not talking about SE here, you're probably going to be good to go for most, states. So invest in yourself, save some money for this test. We will work with you on the budget if you need, but please try to take it as soon as possible and tell us if if you need more accommodation, or if you feel like, yeah, I'm probably ready, but I do not have the resources, or I have issues compiling things up. So, advices like that is definitely helpful, mainly when you are taking the PE, because it's not paper and pencil anymore. So gathering information, getting the right resources is probably one of the important things that I consider in preparing for this exam.
Yep. And if you don't know yet, the PE is very important in your career. I think that's one of the milestones that you can get. So getting it as fast as possible will definitely help you out professionally, because not only is it transferable to structural engineering or civil engineering in general, but all the professions know it. If you go into construction, anything architectural engineering related, it's transferable. People recognize it. So it's definitely, get it as fast as possible. So thanks again, Nabeal, for taking the time to be on the show and telling us about the exams. And it was something that I wanted to know about as well, since I've been kind of out of the game, at least with the PE, once I last took it, and the upcoming SC changes. So thanks a lot.
Of course, Matt. Appreciate you having me here. Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed the episode today. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and/or questions. To leave them, please visit structuralengineeringchannel.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources or websites mentioned during this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, we wish you the best in all of your structural engineering endeavors.